Well, let's go live to independent economist now, Chris Richardson, the best in the business, I always like to say. Chris, good morning to you. So you've had more time now to digest the budget. What do you make of it this morning?
Look, it is challenging. In fact, Treasury and the Treasurer have gone out of their way to say that Australia has two really big and difficult problems. One around gas prices, about to deliver a large hit to the Australian economy. One around NDIS. Take gas prices, they're going up incredibly fast. That's central to what's keeping inflation around for longer, which is central to what will keep interest rates higher for longer, which is part of what slows the economy and adds the extra 150,000 people to the ranks of the unemployed that Treasury is forecasting. That is a major problem for the Australian economy, and you would have thought an unforced error. Where we are an energy superpower, this doesn't need to happen.
So what do you do, Chris?
There are three problems. One is the immediate lever. We don't tax gas right. No, there's no need for a new windfall profits tax. We have one, it just doesn't work. There are questions around maybe the transfer pricing with gas. The main one, though, is this domestic trigger that both sides of politics have struggled with for years. If I read the budget, my take is what Treasury is saying, that this government's first go at renegotiating that domestic energy trigger was a fail. And if that is the view across the government more generally, it urgently needs to do something.
OK, well, the Treasurer had said yesterday, and this was just backed up by the Prime Minister on the program a short time ago, Chris, he talked about extraordinary regulatory reforms that the government is now looking at. I mean, without going into he didn't go into any detail on what that might be, as a matter of fact, but would you have any idea on what option could be taken?
The key needs to be much larger supplies of the vast amounts of gas that Australia produces, guaranteed going into domestic markets, most sensibly using a price trigger of some kind. I get it that the producers will be annoyed around yet another range of negotiations and regulations, but this is past urgent, and there are a range of problems with the way Australia handles gas markets. That's been true under both sides of politics. They've messed it up in different ways. This is now really hurting Australian families, Australian businesses, and Australia's outlook.
Well, on that, I mean, just a short time, just last weekend we had the Japanese Prime Minister meet up with Anthony Albanese, and he expressed concerns about Australia nationalising our energy and having concerns about our supplies to Japan. Is that an example of the kind of blowback that we'd face if we made changes when it came to exporting, or changes to exporting gas? The key change, you don't need much extra quantity of gas going into Australia's domestic markets. The key is the price at which it comes in. So if you get a little more going into Australian domestic markets, that's not a threat to Japan. It's not a threat to our other customers. And Australia does need to be part of a coalition that helps, ultimately, Ukraine defeat Putin's war there. Near term, that's not going to happen unless we do some extraordinary things extraordinarily fast. What about the NDIS? A big break on our budget at the moment too, a heavy weight. How do you address that? What cuts, changes need to be made there? There is a review going, of course, but what beyond that in the short term?
Look, it is really, really hard. We've known for quite some time that there would be an ongoing hole in the Australian budget. We've under-budgeted for many years, again, both sides of politics, around social services and the cost of defence. But in the 6 months since the election, it turns out that the government's actually say, well, a key thing is that the cost trajectory of the NDIS is now much steeper than previously thought. We are talking huge extra dollars, which means the overall hole in the budget is much, much bigger. Now, you can't, you don't fix that entirely through the NDIS. We need to look at spending in general. We need to do things like tax our gas better. I would say we trim, don't throw out, trim that stage 3 personal tax cut. But you need to do a hell of a lot, and very central to this
is the NDIS, and that directly pits the rights. And, we need to do the right thing by Australia's disabled, but we need to do the right thing by Australia's taxpayers. And both of those groups can look at what's happening at the moment and be pretty grumpy around the trajectory of change.
Okay, so I'm out of time now, Chris, but do you have a short answer on what trimming stage 3 tax cuts means?
Yeah, keep that 37 cents in the dollar rate for those above 120,000.
Okay, Chris Richardson, appreciate it. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.